So we have a panel of distinguished authorities who are going to be talking about debts. They are not authorities because they have a lot of debt on their neck, but they have probably the authorities in how to manage that debt or how to get rid of that debt, depending on the objective. But I want to take off a minute and remind you why we do this. My name is Apollo Mbowa. I am the Customer Financial Advisor at NSSF. As NSSF, we have decided to take a conversation about your money on a monthly. Every month we want to talk about money. And it's not the only platform where we talk about money. So many other platforms we are happy to have you on one-on-one and we discuss about your money. We're not talking about the money you have at NSSF. We're talking about the money you have in your pockets. What is it that you are doing with the money you have in your pockets? And of course, it appears like kajanja. You haven't given me my 20%. Now you're talking about my money in my pocket. Yes, it's kajanja, but it is kajanja we need to do, because when eventually your NSSF money comes to you, it needs to make sense to you. And learning about money is a lifelong lesson. So we take off this time. Basically, we want to do three things. One, we want to provide you options. What are those things you can do while you are in employment that will not compromise your employment, that will speak to your retirement? We want to retire, as one of my panelists usually calls it, as judges who made it. What are those things that you can do to reverse that statistic? You've had that statistic that people get their NSSF money and in 2 years they have lost it. We don't want our members, our current members, to be part of that statistics, and we want to reverse. So these programs are intentional and they are deliberate to reverse this statistic. And three, we want to build a financially empowered membership. When we build a financially empowered membership, our membership is 1.2 million people strong, but we have a we have a nation citizenry of about 43 million people. If 1.3 million people are financially empowered, they will influence the other 43 million, and the conversation shall change. So as NSSF, we dedicate our lives, we dedicate our space, we dedicate our time, we dedicate the resources. Of course, I am a paid resource, but the panelists I have here, they are not paid resource. So we dedicate our whatever we can bring on table for us to have this money conversation. Because at the end of it all that counts is not what your job was, who you were at that job, but what you have brought home and what you have taken home. So today, allow me not to go so much into the nitty-gritties, who is that one and that one. We thank you so much for everyone who is joining us. We are talking about debts. Debt is a very, very, very huge thing amongst our membership. We've seen that quite a number of people pick their money, but before it even hits the account, there are liens on their accounts, and that money is being swept away to pay past expenses using their future earnings. So, ladies and gentlemen, today we have a distinguished panel. I keep calling them distinguished. Much as I have a seat, but I don't have a seat near them. I need to sit so far away from them because I am nowhere coming to that bit. I don't know whether it's my right or my left, but to the farthest, the only lady on the panel is Tilda Nabbanja. Tilda Nabbanja is in charge of financial literacy at Bank of Uganda. She's also the founder of Be Money Wiser. She has seen so many lives change. Her passion is actually to see people change through the economy. How can she impact people? For most of you who you might be seeing her on TV, she's on those programs talking about the different habits people can indulge in to be better. Next to her is called the People's Professor. I am privileged to know him as a friend, Livingstone, but as much as I'm saying I know him as a friend, I am nowhere near him. He is far up there. Livingstone Mukasa. People know him for Mazima, but currently he's CEO for 4-in-1 company limited. He will talk about it a little bit further. Then there is Daniel Joloba. All these, when you add up the years of financial intelligence, I'm talking about financial intelligence, not academic intelligence. We are talking about more than 2,000 years. Because for 1 year they live, it is double the academic intelligence in actual years. So allow me to push to Tilda, who's going to be the moderator for today, to take us through the next 2 hours as we discuss debt. Tilda, you're welcome.
This is really a topical issue when it comes to looking at aspects to do with the debt triggers in our lives. Now, for our panelists today, Livingstone and Daniel, this topic is quite broad. But we're going to kind of give our viewers a preamble, a general understanding of how to plan better and manage their debt better. And then we shall dig deeper into the discussion. Just to start us off, first of all, I would like to thank NSSF for this opportunity, because you know that much as we are saving with the fund for our retirement, the fund has come down to us to help us manage our day-to-day planning for finances so that ultimately we can have a better life, not just for today, but for years from now. And one of the key aspects that we need to have on our fingertips is debt management. And in looking at debt, what are some of these triggers that make us acquire debt? On top of which, why are we now and then in this day-to-day debt rat chase? And what are some of the factors that we need to have at the back of our minds when we are thinking of this? So I'll start with you, Daniel. Give us a bit of a preamble on this subject matter, and possibly even before we dig into the subject matter, first expound a bit more on your profile, and then we start off with the topic.
Thanks, Tilda. My name is Daniel Joloba. I'm the Managing Director of Raboni Group. Raboni Group is a grain processing company based in Mukono. I'm also a director in Wijo Group, a long-distance transportation company and hardware specialist. I'm also a director in Bada Investment Group, an SME advisory company. The preamble I would like to give for this topic that's been ably organized by NSSF is something that affects each and every person here in this country. Just to give you a preamble, everybody is actually in debt. If you didn't know that, now you need to know that. Every single Ugandan is actually in debt. From the macro level, when the government borrows money, it borrows it on behalf of Ugandans. And the latest figures we have from the Parliamentary Committee on the National Economy indicated that every single Ugandan is in debt by 992,500 shillings, and it will take us 94 years to clear that debt. So even if you don't have a single debt in the bank or anywhere with a person, you're actually in debt. So we are going to talk about those things, but that's on the government side. But there is also the personal side, where you borrow from a friend, where you borrow from an individual, where you borrow from the bank, whether you borrow from the money lenders. We are going to talk about those things that trigger us take the debt and how to cure them. So please sit tight and listen to this very interesting discussion.
Okay, thank you so much, Daniel. And the figures that you've mentioned kind of make some of us wonder what we can do next, because in most cases we are focusing on our day-to-day life. We are thinking, oh yeah, I've managed my debt, everything is okay. But today we are being reminded that even as a country, there is something happening there. So what can we do, like starting from our level, that can ultimately impact the country? So it shows us that if we manage something better in our lives, if we thought about debt with better perspective in our personal lives, we can better impact the country as a whole. So hopefully, as we carry on with this discussion, we can see how we can go about these day-to-day decisions that can enable a typical Ugandan to improve something with their debt management going forward. So I'll turn to Livingstone. Kindly give us a preamble, but starting with breaking down your profile as possibly briefly as possible, because it is such a very big scope of experience. But let's try to enlighten our viewers on who you are, what you've done, and then will you give a brief preamble to the subject matter of today?
Welcome our viewers tonight, those that are tuned in. I take this moment to say, hopefully things are going well in your lives. My name is Livingstone Mukasa. I'm the CEO and co-founder for 41 Financial Services. Literally, 41 Financial Services is an organization that is building what we call bridges to people to their dreams, and usually using savings and investing. So we want to see people manage their money better. I'm also the the managing director for Cleaning Concert, a company I started some 15 years ago. It's a cleaning company. Living Business Education, where I'm the lead business trainer, and that's the work that I do for financial literacy and business training, and a couple of other. But I think I'm more known as a people's professor. And the reason I'm known as a people's professor is I tend to try and take economics to the street man, the street level, what streetonomics as I call it. How do we break down complex issues like we're talking today about debt? How do we break it to the person to see where he can start chewing on that big problem? So when I look at debt, it has negative connotations in people's minds. But I want to say to the note, and I say that debt on its own is not bad. It's like money. It's like how you handle it. So on one side, you could have positive debt, and positive debt is debt that pays itself. Negative debt is debt that is forcing you to earn money from somewhere and you use it. So I'm going to look at it for me, as the discussion goes, as I want to look at debt as both a good thing and a bad thing. Because you might be celebrating here and you're tuned in and you're celebrating tonight that because you don't have debt, you are good off. Actually, it could be that it's a problem to you. So let's see how this unfolds.
Yes. Okay, thank you so much, Livingstone. And that's very insightful. Because when you look at the FinScope survey 2018, it looks at 54% of Ugandans do not borrow. Did you know that? And the survey is telling us that possibly these people are risk averse, you know? But what you have highlighted today takes us back to think deeper into debt. Is it good? Are you making the right decision today to borrow? Is it bad? Are you really so indebted that please, today don't borrow? First manage what you already have, and then you are able to survive comfortably with the rest of the debt that you have. Now, on top of this, you find that most of our population are inclined to borrowing informally. You go to your brother and you say, hey, help me with some money. You go to so and so, as in your close relations, to see that you can get debt. And the biggest reason for this is that people feel there is easier access to finance from the people you know. However, the institutions that are formally supervised by regulators such as Bank of Uganda, etc., these institutions also give us a source of loans. But you find that most people kind of are a bit skeptical and prefer their savings groups because they think possibly the process is lengthy. But all in all, regardless of where someone gets the money from, regardless of where you borrow from, what are you doing right so that you manage that loan better, you manage the debt better, and ultimately be able to live a better life at the end of it all. Now, today we're going to look at some of the behaviors, some of these day-to-day things that people do with thinking about managing their debt and the decisions we make with access to finance. And from these decisions, we're going to see what are some of the key pointers we need to have at the back of our minds, such that someone viewing out there faced with a similar scenario, or in future if you're faced with such a dilemma, you're ably equipped to make the right decision at the right time and be able to move your life from one level to the next. I'm coming back to you, Daniel. Let us look at least one of these kinds of behaviors that a typical Ugandan out there has, and possibly let's discuss it further to see some of the the key things we need to understand when it comes to a particular behavioral trait or way in which we do certain things with debt that can move our lives to the next level. Share with us something on that.
Some of the behaviors that drive people in debt are actually self-inflicted.
Yes.
And I want to make it as simple as I can. And for the person to do a personal reflection and say, where am I going wrong? Livingstone has mentioned here that there is good debt and there is bad debt. I would like to expound on that and say there is consumption debt and there is productive debt. Productive debt is debt taken to further a business enterprise to generate more money so that you can be able to pay back the debt and also retain something. Consumption means you are borrowing money to actually go and consume something. You borrow money to go and pay school fees. School fees payment is not an investment. It's actually consumption, if you look at it in terms of debt. Going to borrow a car for personal use is actually consumption. Going to borrow money, some people borrow money to go and buy food. That's consumption. Some people borrow money to actually go and pay rent. That's consumption. So in terms of the behaviors that people exhibit, there is one thing called the mentality of now, now, now. You want something now, but you actually don't have the means to finance that something now. What happens? You are forced to dip your fingers into the pockets of another person. That person can be a friend, can be a relative, can actually be a bank, or can be a money lender. Because you want something now, you are forced to actually go and dip your fingers into their pockets. That money that you are trying to use, somebody has actually put it aside. You didn't put it aside. So which means you are trying to touch somebody else's money that they put aside. And now, because you want something now, you don't have that willingness to wait a little bit and say, can I postpone this gratification? Can I probably prepare myself so that if I want to consume or I want to invest in something, then I will wait until time X or 2 years from now for me to be able to invest in that. I'll give you an example. Some young man, what I would say a corporate, would want to buy a car because, well, they don't want to be seen in a taxi. What happens? They take a salary loan. Oh, it's easy. My employer is actually giving us a salary loan. So people actually celebrate. Now they want a car now, but actually they can't afford a car now. So that's one of the mentalities. The second one, it's simple pride. Just pride. Somebody's just proud. They need to be seen by another person. But they don't have the means to display that luxurious item that they want. Somebody wants to buy a TV so that he actually invites his friend to see the TV that they've actually bought into the home. So he wants people to see, and therefore he takes a financial decision to take on debt just to be seen. Can you imagine? So somebody takes on debt to be seen and approved by another person. And typically that person is showing some level of insecurity deep down inside them. They feel they need to get approval from other people by spending on something actually they don't have the capacity to purchase. And now that is pride that a person has. So once a person has that mentality of now, and the mentality of trying to please other people, they are likely to enter into debt that they wouldn't actually have entered into. And that normally strangles a rope around their necks. Only to regret 2-3 years later that actually the debt that I took was not even necessary in the first place. Yeah.
You know, still on the same point, how would you advise someone out there, someone who is in that struggle? Because, you know, sometimes most of these decisions we enter into without thinking through whether it's the best decision or not. Is this a good loan or a bad loan? And someone could be listening and is like looking at the car and is like, I can't even buy fuel for that car, but I already bought it. What should I do now? You know, while another person has just got a job and he's looking at his friends, they're already driving. So there is that push factor that makes you do some of these decisions, which you, at the end of it all, need to fall back a bit and think through and say, is this the best decision I should make at this time or not? So what should a typical person out there think about before making such a decision?
One of the things that a person should be able to do, one, to be comfortable in your own skin. That's extremely very important. Nobody gets prizes for being approved by another person. The people that are compelling you to take debt won't be around when actually you are struggling with that debt. You'll make phone calls to them when that debt is actually grown into a humongous monster eating you up. And none of them will actually even pick your call. That's when you realize that actually people that I thought were my friends are not exactly my friends. But you took a decision to please people that were not exactly actually your friends. So one of the things that I always advise people, that just be comfortable in your skin. If you can't afford to pay it in cash, especially for something that I would call a want, then don't go for it. If you can't afford to pay for a want, not a need, for a want. A want is something that you feel, I actually want it. Do you actually need it? If you don't need it, then you actually just want it. So if you think a car is something that you want, the question I'll ask you, do you actually need that car? And if you don't need that car, then you don't take on that debt. Have that self-assuredness about yourself and say that I'm not pleasing anyone apart from myself. The moment you are comfortable in your own skin, then you are not going to be pulled by the unnecessary peer pressures that actually come. If you are comfortable in your own skin, people's opinions don't matter. Your opinion matters. Your opinion is the one that matters in this case, not your friend's opinion. If your friend is taking you in a direction that's going to drive you on a slippery road for unnecessary debt, then you can put the brakes and say, you know what, it doesn't matter, I don't need the car, or I don't need that luxurious apartment, I can't afford it. I am comfortable in my small room in a ghetto somewhere where I'm sleeping, and I will work myself out of this place. Slowly but surely, along the road. So if you are comfortable in your own skin, then you are able to do what? To solve that. The second bit, most of these people actually take on that debt without actually knowing the cost implications. One of the things that they always ask for is just, what's the interest rate? That's the only cost they ask. But debt always has so many other costs. Processing fee, legal fees, mortgage fees, insurance fees, personal and for the property, a series of costs, not less than 15 costs. But typically, people will ask for only one cost, which is, what's the interest rate? Now, if you only know the interest rate without you knowing the attendant costs associated with that debt, you only realize later, especially when it's time for paying back that debt. That's what about that cost? I didn't know about it. Then they say, well, please look at what you signed. So people always sign only looking at one element, and that's just one of the almost 15 elements about the cost of debt. So if a person is going to extricate themselves from that position, one, have the assuredness that I don't have to please anybody, and I'll do decisions that please me and are long-term in nature. Don't look for short-term fixes. Two, look at the costs associated with that debt, and if you are uncomfortable with any of those costs, walk away and say, I won't be able to take that.
Okay, thank you very much. So a person out there that's borrowing, that is a reminder. Understand the terms and conditions of that loan before you borrow, not so. And at the end of it all, by the time you enter into that contract, by the time you sign, you should be aware and sure that this is something you actually need and you have planned, and you can even maintain it over the test of time. Now, one of the key statistics still from the FinScope survey show us that out of the people that borrow, the 46% who access the Ugandans, the adult Ugandans who borrow are 46%. And by adults, we're looking at above 16 years that were surveyed during this period in 2018. You find that 43% of the people who borrow for consumption. Exactly what you have talked about. And they are just borrowing for day-to-day, you know, managing this and that, things that may be possibly beyond our means. So we need to take some time back and think about some of these things. Now you find that other people borrow 22% borrow for unexpected expenses, the emergencies that come up. But last year in 2020, we were shocked by the surprise of COVID-19, that if you have been borrowing for emergencies, at that time everyone needed the money. So who are you going to borrow from? So it takes us back to think through our lives a little bit better. Now, we shall have a poll question for our discussion today, and we can link it to exactly what we have talked about. For the viewers out there, why do you borrow? What are some of the reasons that you're borrowing for? Are you borrowing for consumption? Are you borrowing to invest? You know, to move your business to the next level? What are you borrowing for? Please look at the options with the poll question and answer. And at the end of our discussion today, we shall see some of these day-to-day decisions that we are making and how we can learn from each other. Now, back to you, Daniel. Give us a point. How are some of these Ugandans out there, you know, handling these issues of debt? And how can we learn from a lesson or two from such behaviors?
So it's an interesting thing to note that the African was dumped into capitalism, the free market economy, without understanding the mechanics of how it works. So the basis of the economy is an exchange game. In other words, you gotta have to exchange what you have earned and exchange it with something else that someone else has.
Yes.
And every time you exchange, you better come out a little bit higher than it is. But when you exchange and you are coming out short and you start borrowing other people's value, you are creating a problem for yourself. From a consumption angle, you're creating a problem. However, if your borrowing is to increase your means of bringing more value to the market, you actually could come out a little bit higher because you are taking resources from people that are not using them well, and then you start using them better. So when I go back to what Daniel, it actually shoots into what Daniel was saying. He said
just people borrow for things because they find that they want something.
Yes.
And they are also actually a place where people are getting into debt because they are buying things because they believe they can afford them.
Yes.
I have come to a conclusion that because you can afford it doesn't mean you should buy it.
That's true.
It's interesting. Someone just says, I bought a bar of soap because I can afford it. Now, because you can afford the bar of soap that you never needed, you're going to have to borrow for the paraffin. You're going to have to borrow for the Yaka units. You're going to have to borrow for the school fees. So be careful for things that you buy just because you can afford them. But also, the dangers are that as a society, Uganda as a country will have a dependency problem. We have so many people that depend on one salary. I think the number is about 6. 6 people depend on each salary that someone gets. There are about 6 people that are trying to live off that salary. And they are pulling you. Your mother is pulling you in one side. Your uncle is pulling you. Your sister, almost like the entire village depends on your salary. And that creates a savior mentality that I'm going to save the world. That I'm going to go out and everyone that so if I get money, I try to split that money around us, and that creates a problem. So the thing that comes in, if you're going to avoid this debt and recognize that you actually have one, is to know in which means should I live in? What are my means so that I don't live within my means? Because the danger, if you hear to most financial analysts or advisors, they tell you to live within your means. Please don't live within your means. Because if you live in your means, you are one punch away from disaster. The day COVID comes and you are living in your means, you're going now to live above your means, which is as bad as living within your means. So the people that don't, that will survive are the people that live below their means. Mark this, it's a simple math. You earn 100,000, live as if you live on 80,000, live as if you live on 70,000. Leave a mark. And the other point that then ties into that is that Danny talked about emergencies. Emergencies happen, but there are things we should plan for. Like I said, we fell into capitalism we never knew. Because when in our old judges, the judges had granaries. They would keep grain for the days when it will not rain properly. So they could have something in the garden that they can run to. But now in the market economy, in the cash economy, we gotta have to save those emergencies in the form of an emergency fund. Where you say, I have 3 months worth of my living costs. I live on $1 million, there is 3 million between me and what I call the dogs coming to chase. So if you start understanding that, you better educate yourself about how this entire system allocates resources and how does the money fly out of you. Have you ever wondered, if I were to pose a question to you, have you ever wondered why it takes you 30 days to get paid, but you are broke in 12? It's a simple question. That means you're not getting the math right.
Okay, thank you so much for that. And the discussion is just getting heated up. And of course, for our viewers out there, this is something we need to, I hope everyone actually has somewhere to write some of these points, because personally, I'm learning a lot from our land gentlemen here this afternoon. So, okay, let's carry on with the discussion. And Apollo is going to give us the poll for this afternoon. Go on, Apollo.
Thank you so much, Tilda. Debt. I will give you both a poll and also some questions that you can write down. But first, let's do our first poll, our first and second poll. It just takes about a few seconds for you to fill out our first question is, who are you? Are you 20, above 20, or above 50? Kindly tick. Also, let us know if you have ever taken debt or not. Debt. And by debt, we're not just talking about a bank loan. We are talking about debt. Have you gotten Kaduka debt? Have you gotten border debt? Mokash, Berako, Wewole debt. All that is debt. Kindly let us know. We are closing that poll in the next 5 minutes. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We'll have the results being displayed. Kindly let me know which results you have. Tilda, according to our results, 90% of our participants have taken debt. 90% of our participants have taken debt. And probably there is a good 10% that have never taken debt. Either they are young or something, but they have never taken debt. We'll explain that further. According to age range, the majority of our participants are between 30 years to 40 years. And that it accounts for about 46%. The minority is above 50. We have about 6% who are above 50. And then we have a healthy minority here at about 23%, that is between 20 to 30 years. So between 20 to 40 years, that's where our majority lies. Allow me to also read to you some of the questions so that you take note and answer them as you proceed. Someone is asking, can I take debt to bail out? How do I take debt to bail out my business? That's their question. Someone is saying, how do I take debt to bail out my business? Allow me to just get you another question. This technology is playing me, but we'll get there, worry not. Oh yes, I do not seek people's approval, neither do I care about their opinions. But for some reasons, I get debt to make myself comfortable and buy things that don't fit in my budgets. I will borrow to buy an expensive dress so I feel good. Which category is my disease? Tilda, you will make some clarification on that. Some clarifications on the issue of borrowing to pay tuition for 3 years course. Is it an investment or it's consumption? Allow me to stop there. I will come back for the next poll. For now, I'll hand back to the experts. Tilda, back to you.
Okay, thank you so much, Apollo. And those are very interesting questions that we shall take on a little bit later in the discussion. I hope the panelists have noted those. So for now, we're going to carry on with our discussion and a few more statistics for us to note. Like I had mentioned, most of these statistics are from the FinScope 2018 survey, which is accessible online. Thanks to Financial Sector Deepening Uganda, you can access them. Just Google this, and you see a few more statistics to do with our financial behavior, and possibly you can use this to make to have a better understanding of some of these aspects. Now you find that 27% of adults in Uganda will cut their expenses when they are coping with a tough situation. However, we have another 23% who may do more work. You may look for extra work here and there for you to survive, which is also understandable and advisable. Now we have an 11% who, whenever they have a problem, for them they will borrow. Any emergency that comes up, for them they will borrow. But today we are being reminded that the reasons as to why you borrow point you to either good debt or bad debt. And as we carry on with our discussion, we want to see that if you can relate with one of the situations that we have mentioned, think through your decisions and see that you're making a wise decision as you are accessing debt. Now, Livingstone, back to you. Can we have another example of some of these aspects that influence our decision making to keep in this debt chase? Every time, you have seen people, you ask someone, can you join our circle? The first thing they'll ask you is, do you lend? Is there access to money? Can I borrow? You tell someone, why don't you form an investment club? Let's try to invest our money in this and that. The first thing they'll say, after we have saved money, will we also be able to borrow from that investment club? Basically, we are in this debt chase. And most of the people who ask such questions already have loans. They have got the bank loan, they can't go back to the bank. They are borrowed from, actually people can even borrow from their spouses. You borrow from your wife and you disappear. You're defaulting, but you're staying under, same roof. But what are some of these other aspects that we can think about in our day-to-day behavior that can guide our better understanding of this topic of debt?
So we can add to the discussion and say that just because debt is available, that doesn't mean you should take it.
Yes.
So that's a basic point to make. I have been helping form savings and investment clubs for a very long time. Like under my belt is like maybe 200, 300 groups that are formed. And most people's savings end up being wiped out by the debt. So they are not literally saving, they're just actually preparing future payments for that debt. That is the commonality in our saving groups, and which is actually a very big disadvantage. So one of the things that you begin to see among our people is attaching their expenditure to their education level. Most of you that are saving with NSSF at least have some kind of education. There is nothing that says that because you have a degree, you should sleep in a bungalow. No. Please put your education on the side and then live with below your means that you are able to create within. And then know that this game of creating wealth is a 20, 30-year game. Ever since I joined the workforce, it's now 20 years. And I'm yet to say I am ready to retire. So better be able to plan, because if you just look at the short term, just because your car is on, the landlord is paid, the school fees are sorted, doesn't mean you're doing well. So you need to be able to say, what will hurt me in the future? In our case, when I got married in 2003, we quickly came to a conclusion that it will be school fees and rent that will actually hurt us. So we said, okay, you better sort out your residential problem before the kids start going to secondary school, when the fees start going up a little bit. And again, you have responsibilities that you can afford. Because it goes down. When you are getting responsibilities, I was talking to the married group in my church over the weekend, and I talked to this couple that has been married for 3 months. And I told them, if you married, and I said, you live on the salary that is higher of the two, please invest the rest. Because I have found out that most quarrels in marriages and families result when people combine to live on two incomes, and one person starts squeaking around or loses the income. But if you were living on one income and investing to try and power your ability to earn more so that you can live a better life. So these are the things. So if you look at over expenditure and the inability to be able to look ahead of you and giving people money that you actually shouldn't be able to give money to. I see people saying, I will not build my own house until I have built a house for my parents. These are the society problems we have. But actually, that's the wrong way to go, because your responsibility is to your children, not necessarily to you. Yes, you have responsibility. Your parents are the last in the line of your money. But people don't want to understand, and when we say, please don't educate your children to be your retirement plan. And then they say, no, I should take my children to the best school, even if I'm going to end up in debt. Well, Livingstone, speaking personally, I hate going to the head teacher and having to negotiate for the bank slip they sent to me 3 months ago. And I start negotiating. Come on. That means I cannot afford the school where I have sent the kids. So these are the things you take in mind and say, set your own rules. When it comes to debt, if someone says, but you know what, the bank is giving out some more money, don't take the loan just because it is available.
Okay, thank you so much, Livingstone. That was those were very interesting examples, and it also links back to the previous point of don't spend on something simply because you can afford. So don't get debt simply because you can pay back. I like the example of school fees. You know, in most cases, it still goes back to what Daniel had hinted on the issue of comparing ourselves to others. Do you know people take children to schools because, my so-and-so has their children in that school, so you take your children to the same school. And yet, that so-and-so is not called by the headmaster the way they are calling you, to answer for some of these things. So it's very important for us to get that formula, what you've talked about, that formula that works for you, where it doesn't matter what other people think. You know, relationships, what you've hinted on money in relationships, the biggest problem is comparing. So-and-so's husband bought his children this. How about you? Why can't you buy for our children this? But that is so-and-so. Let's not go down that road of comparing ourselves to others, because at the end of it all, we end up in the consumption debt that does not take us to the next level. But gentlemen, what is the right debt? How do you end up in good debt? What are some of those things that someone can think through so that when you're getting the loan, it is the right loan? When you're borrowing from so much as you can pay back, it is the right decision for you to borrow. Daniel had given us one point that, yeah, look at the loan, see that, okay, yes, you have accessed this loan. What is the cost for that loan? Will you be able to pay back? Will you be able to pay back in time? What are some of the other aspects people can look into so that you're getting good debt and not just borrowing because debt is available, you know? Another point on that?
Yes. It also ties into what one of the questions I've gotten from the participants.
Yes. You answer both. Hit two birds.
Let me hit two birds. I wrote the question
Yes.
here. I said, how do I take debt to bail out my business? I underline that word, bail. Now, if somebody says, please bail me out, what's the first thing you understand? That
Possibly they are struggling.
They're in trouble. Now, if a person comes to borrow money and they are in trouble, already that's a bad signal.
Of how they will pay back.
How they pay back.
Yes.
It's always a bad signal. If a person is at the police, a friend calls you, the police has them in the cells, and they give you a phone call. My shoes have been removed, my belt has been removed, my shirt has been removed, please come and bail me out. What's the first thing you think about? You think this friend of mine is in trouble and they are going to dip their fingers in my pocket. And most likely they will not pay back that money. So when you mention the word bail out, already your business is in trouble. The question I'll ask you, dear listener, dear viewer, what got your business in trouble in the first place? You need to look for that answer first before you look for the road leading you to debt. Because the moment the business is in trouble, you have run out of cash, you have needs to pay. There is something that happened in your business, and it comes back to how probably you manage the business resources in the first place. You might have left a lot of pilferage to happen. You might have been just plain lazy. You might not have done the work that's needed to be done. Is it solved by debt? The answer is no. If you run to debt, you are looking for a short-term fix to a long-term problem. And if you take debt, you are likely to find yourself in debt 2-3 years down the line, probably losing your business at the end of the day. So what is the good debt that you should have? Good debt is the one that moves you from point A to point B in terms of earning and income. And to do that, you must have your own money. There is a reason why banks always look for rich people to lend them. They don't ever look for poor people. Banks never go around in slums looking for poor people. Come and we'll lend you money. They never even send their a representative. And there's a reason why they do that. Why they never want to lend a poor person. A poor person, you are a liability to a bank. They don't want even to come near you. A rich person, they'll even give you phone calls. They'll even open the bank for you at 6 p.m. when they've already closed. You make a phone call, I'm coming, they'll open for you. Why? They know you are likely to earn them money. And they have done an assessment that you already have enough for you to be able to pay back. So they are only accelerating. The things you would have done in 1 year, they want to help you to do them in 8 months by giving you that debt. So you already have a reputation, you already have a bottom on which you are seated as a person. And now when you have already bottom, you have your own reserves, you have your own assets that are generating money. Then you can only trigger the debt issue to take you to another level. Don't go looking for debt to start a business. Don't go looking for debt to buy a TV to watch your home. Don't go looking for debt to buy a car to drive. Don't go to get a debt. I heard some people are making even announcements, giving loans for weddings. Can you imagine? People taking loans to go and make a wedding. Taking loans to actually go and do a Kwanjula loan. And there are long lines of people who are actually lining up to actually go and build. Now, the moment you know, this is the litmus test for that debt. Is it going to earn me an income or not? If the answer is yes, then that's a good signal, that's a good debt. If the answer is no, then walk away in peace. Do not try to convince yourself. Don't get what I call the confirmation bias. Confirmation bias means you convince yourself despite the availability of all the evidence that it's wrong.
all the facts are clear.
The facts
but
are
you've
clear.
convinced yourself, you know what, let me just borrow.
You start quoting
You'll end up
scripture
in-
that happy are those who believe. Happy are those who trust without seeing.
When all the facts.
The facts are bare on the hand that you are not going to earn money from this thing.
Yes.
But you say God told us to believe. So you can give yourself that confirmation bias that I will believe that I will earn money. My pastor said so. My reverend said so, that I will earn the money. So let me pick the money. Yet the things show that it's already wrong from even before you start. So the moment, to answer your question, what would be that good date? Answer that question. If you get a yes or no, take your decision as a person. Does it enable you to earn an extra income? If the answer is yes, you already have a starting point, not the end point, by the way.
Yes.
Then you do other litmus tests on that date before you actually take a final decision. If the answer is no, don't even ask other things. Just walk away. Then you'll be in peace.
So
Okay, yes.
the litmus test is simple. If we take it here, we're here to teach and to educate. So there are two sides to everyone's income. I mean, on every financial side. You either have a liability or you have an asset. When you take debt, you are increasing your liability. But at the same time, you should be increasing your assets. But if you are taking a liability that will reduce your assets, then that's really a bad debt. So a good debt actually is a debt that has the capacity to pay itself off over time and add something to your asset. So when you look and you're walking in and somebody is talking about nice things, normally, let me just use a car example. I once went with a lady who was a head teacher in the UK to buy a car here in Uganda in the bond. And she said, if you go to buy a car in the bond, the rule in England is let that guy not switch on the radio. Please, take off the lights, take off the radio. Because the salesman is trying to show you what you can see. If a radio is bad, you are down 400,000. If the engine is bad, you are down 20 million. So now you need to do in life what matters. What matters to you. For example, I am building assets. I came from zero. 10 years in the slum is where I was. So I know what it means to struggle. Now, if I am going to take debt that takes me back to the slum, I'm going to watch it out. So like I said, this is a journey. So look at the debt. Like I said, good debt always takes a little bit higher. But there is something key. The viewer talked about bailing out a business. And we have a term in business we call throwing good money at bad money.
Yes.
When you have a debt, you might be somewhere and you have been conned. But now you need to chase this con man. He conned you 5 million, but now the police is asking 500,000 to chase the con man. But if chances are that even if you get the con man, he had already chewed your 5 million. So the 500 you use to chase the con man is bad debt, and therefore you are throwing good money at bad money. I've learned to cut my losses and walk away when the deal is bad. Things have gone away. I even go to my home and tell my wife, you know what, they don't be uncle here. Today things did not go the way they should. But this business of always saying, okay, I am going to try and go and borrow. And then, lastly on this point that I want to make today, every time you take debt, it's a bet on your future income. It actually refuses your ability to consume in the future. So if you want to take it now, that means somebody is placing a yen. He's trying to say, I'm borrowing you now, but whatever you earn in the future is dependent. You have to give me. That's why the bank always wants to see what is your salary. And all of a sudden, they give you money and you find that instead of taking it 100%, you now have to take 40% and live on it. However, interestingly, a good chunk of our people in this market use debt as a saving mechanism. How? They take a debt because they cannot save by themselves. So the guy takes 20 million to buy land, he goes in debt for that land, and now they start chopping off. So we are also aware that is a good debt. If you are using it as a saving mechanism and you have things to show. Someone walked in my office last Thursday, and he retired 3 years ago. He said when he retired, as he was walking out of one of the big banks in this country, he was paying his last loan. All the years he had worked in the bank, he had taken loans, but he knew I was smart enough that the day he retires his last date. And I told him, frankly, from the people's professor, I have analyzed your finances, and I think you will do well. You okay for you, you don't have a problem with me. Let's realign those assets.
Yeah.
So if you start seeing that you have nothing to write home about, you find a man, if you are here, you're tuned in and you're 40 years, and your savings on your account are less than the car you are driving, man, you're heading for trouble.
First, repeat that last point again. Repeat that last point.
Someone on this, of the people that are watching,
Yes.
I don't know what your name is, but let me speak like a pastor.
Yes.
If you look on your savings and they are less than the cost of the car you are driving, and you are 40 years plus, I am here to warn you, trouble is coming your way. It's still doing push-up.
Okay, that's a good one. So this is something for us to think deeper about this issue of the debt rat chase. Now, you find that there are a number of key aspects you have pointed out. And I would like to start from where Daniel had highlighted, where if you're looking at the example of this gentleman whose business needs a bailout, it takes us way back into where he should have started in the first place. You see, in Uganda, we normally borrow for such issues, to boost the business, to bail out the business, to grow the business, and things of that sort. But there is one key aspect that people who are starting business normally lose sight of at the start, and it affects them years later. That's the issue of using your money to start that business in the first place. Now, you find that we normally encourage people that save your money, start the business, and let it grow so that it reaches that level. Now, for the people like this gentleman where you have hit a snag at some point, sometimes you have to downsize. You know how organizations downsize and they fall back a bit? But that downsizing is also dependent on whether your business grew through the process. Because it's not easy to downsize to where you don't know. Are we together? Normally, if you started small, your business has gone through all the levels of growth to reach where it is. So at the point when you need that kind of bailout, but you may possibly not afford the debt, you may need to downsize a bit. But as you're downsizing, you're looking at your business maybe 5 years ago, 7 years ago, and possibly 8 years ago. But you know that the same way you grew from that point, you can still go back there, survive through that situation, and then grow it back into that position where you can ably survive. Now, this is just a solution for the person who cannot afford the debt in the first place because they are already struggling. Go back, start small, and grow. Again, after all, if you could reach there, you can get back there still with time. But then the other aspect that our viewers out there need to carefully be thinking about right now is, much as we have talked about, yes, you can access good debt, yes, there is bad debt out there, what is your current situation? What is your current decision-making process? And where are you standing right now with the level of debt in your life? Are you being chased around by 4 different service providers, but you yourself are also still looking for a 5th to survive through the current situation you're in? So at some point in our financial decision-making, we need to stop, pause a bit, pause, think about your life, think about the situation you're in right now. Should you first manage the loans you already have? Should you look at how to get the right loan, but from which institution, and things of that sort? But then it brings us to the next question about the lady who asked the question about her borrowing because she feels good. She doesn't compare herself to people. She doesn't, but she borrows because, when I buy that dress, however much, it's 300,000, and possibly I only have 50, but I can borrow the 250 and get that dress, which is the latest 2021 edition, and I feel good. Then you wake up 2 weeks later, you have not worn that dress to any occasion, As in the thing that you thought was of so much value, you've actually not really used it, but the debt is staring at you. How can we advise a viewer out there who makes such spontaneous decisions, and then later at the end of it all, you think back and you're like, what was I thinking before I got that item? How can we advise such a person?
It's a very interesting question. When she paused on the question, my mind already ran to a fact that I would like to share with the viewers.
Yes.
You know, in Uganda we have what we call debit cards, and we have credit cards. Debit cards means you already own that money. It's in the bank.
Yes.
You already own it. Credit card, you don't own the money. That money is owned by somebody else. Now, I want to share with some figures. This is from BOU report, Bank of Uganda report, Financial Stability report,
Yes.
the latest one that's available. The number of credit card holders increased from 7,104 to 9,247 in a period of just 12 months. The amount of money that was spent using credit cards rose from 123 billion to 144 billion. Now, these figures show that people are using somebody else's money to satisfy typically a want.
Day-to-day consumption.
Day-to-day consumption. Now, I want to relate it to what the lady asked. I'm not appeasing anybody, but I buy the dress to feel nice. Most credit card holders, I don't own a single credit card personally. Most credit card holders hold them to appease somebody and also to feel nice about it. So do you have a credit? Yes, I have a credit card.
And you swipe away.
You go to the supermarket, you buy mangoes, you swipe. You go to the supermarket, you buy one blue band, you swipe. You don't have the money, but you feel you need to swipe. This card must be used.
It is available.
It's available. That's the 144 billion that people are spending without having it.
Yeah.
Then the lady who says, I spend this money, so I buy the dress, I go and borrow money to buy the dress to feel good. That is called compulsive behavior. She is compulsive. Probably as she was sending an email to somebody, an advert came through a nice dress and says, I need this dress. Where's my card? You swipe. And Amazon delivers for you. And Jeff Bezos already is counting the money on you. He has already earned money because you felt you needed to feel nice about something. For him, he's already pocketing money just because you actually swiping. So that compulsive behavior can actually also be tamed.
Yes.
Have you ever gone to a supermarket with your child? They had no clue that something existed. And they say, Mommy, I want that.
Yes.
Daddy, I want that. They start pointing to things. That's compulsive behavior. But what do you do as a parent? Do you spend? Does a child pointing to whatever they want, do you spend on it? You tell them, no, I'll not buy that one because it is not on my budget. Full stop. No discussions about it, no entertaining of further deliberations about it. The same thing can also happen to an individual. You can go back and say, oh, it makes me feel nice, but was it part of my planned expenditure? If the answer is no, don't spend it. Nobody will kill you for not spending on it. And believe you me, 2 days later, you'll actually not even want that dress. That dress will give you palliative feelings of a few hours. And after that, you say, actually, I never needed it. Probably it doesn't even fit you after just 1 month. So that's what I would advise.
So you've highlighted two key things. For someone to be able to manage that compulsive and impulsive decision, you think about what was your plan in the first place. You know, having a dress, personally, I believe, having a nice dress is okay. Get it. But you've mentioned the key thing we need to have at the back of our mind. Did you plan for it in the first place? Have you planned for it? The child's example you gave, did that toy the child wants, the toy that he wants at that time, was it planned for by the time you were coming to that place? And then the other key aspect is to say no. No. You know, it's a two-lettered word that most people don't use. In most of these mistakes we make with our money, it's because the yes overwhelms the no. Now, in that same scenario, the lady who keeps doing these things because they make her feel good and all that needs to learn to also say no to herself. You see, the same way we tell the child, you also learn to say no to yourself on certain things, which also takes us back to the debt issue. The banks are marketing, they are making their money, they are making, a killing from these credit cards. But they bring a product to you. Think through your life and make that one decision. Should it be a no? A simple no. No, I'm okay. I don't need a credit card right now. Or, yes, I need it because I have these transactions that are actually going to make me more money and I need this money immediately. So it reminds us that think through that decision before you get any loan. Think through that decision to see that should you say no to it, or should it be a simple yes so that it moves your life to the next level? And that yes is purely for the good debt. Now, Livingstone, first add on to that, and we carry on with this discussion. Yes.
Let me scare some people.
Uh-huh.
They can learn something from here.
Yes.
Money is a coward. It's one of the worst cowards that I've ever seen. Reason being, it doesn't want to go where it will be eaten. It actually fears that pocket that eats it. That's why it will start to learn somewhere where it will be kept in the money, in the pocket longer. Because I say, getting worse in Uganda is a simple math. You have 10,000, 20,000 finds it. So the man of yesterday finds the money of today. That is the way to get. So in other words, it doesn't want to go where it is eaten. But let me tie in it with something that is critical for our discussion here. Because the biggest or the best cure for debt is frugality. No, and being frugal means that you question the value you are getting on every purchase. You question the value of the relationship that you are building. You question the value you are getting from your pastor and his preaching. Just because the guy comes in and starts saying, raises his hand, doesn't mean he deserves my tithe. I'm going to question the decision, the value I'm getting from him. Everything around you becomes a question. Am I getting the value? Because that's frugality. So, therefore, you should be that person that drives a car. And they know you. That man drives a black car. He's been driving it for 5 years. If the people can't remember which car you last drove, unless you're a son of a rich man, maybe there is trouble with you. So you should be known where you live to become a permanent address.
Yes.
So therefore, you should understand that if you pick a standard of living, you better pick something you can live on for 10 years. I picked my standard of living 10 years ago, and it has not fluctuated. Money can't change me. Even if you send $1 billion to my account, it's going to not change who I am. I'm a guy who I still have the same set of friends. Even if I have 10 million or 1 billion, money won't change me. If money will change you, that means you're likely to be in debt. So it won't even come your way. So you look at the situation of where we are panel beating and getting ourselves into. It's these small foxes. The Bible talks about small foxes that eat the entire harvest.
Yes.
The small foxes are how many liters of milk you are buying at home, and how are you using the yaka units at home. Where do you buy your food? Do you buy from the village market, or do you buy it once a week or twice, 3 times? Those are small foxes. Because nobody in this country, like I know it, our earnings are low. So the first thing you need to be able to do is to eventually learn an efficient home. Everything about you, teach your children about efficiency. I remember the president taught us about how to cut kawunga, to cut pocho, and all of us were laughing.
Yes.
But there was
a good example.
There was a good example. If people start wasting food at home, there is no way you're going to work harder to try and earn more money. So therefore, I pick a standard of living that you're going to live on. Some people have been coming to me and saying, no, Livingstone, this car that you're driving is something else. You should be able to buy this one. No. Do you know how much tire a 4-wheel drive costs? The tire of a 4-wheel drive, before you tell me to switch from my special. Because I am not living your life, I am living my life. I need to be able to be, like Daniel said, be comfortable with who I am.
Yes.
And not let other people learn my life. And there are so many people actually trying to learn our lives. The politicians are trying to learn our lives. the pastors and the reverends are trying to teach us.
And the media
When I
is
go,
advertising.
when I go to sit, I went into a fundraiser, they said, now the rich man has come. This man is good for 10 iron sheets. and plus 5 bags of cement. They even decide how much you should.
Okay. Now the discussion is becoming a little bit hotter and heated up, but I'm hoping our viewers out there are picking a point or two. Now we're going to go through our next poll, and Apollo can take us through.
Thank you, Tilda. I keep looking at the feedback here, and I'm amazed. Thank you, Livingstone. Thank you, Daniel. There's quite a number of things people are picking from you, but I'm going to read some questions later on. Let's first do our last poll question, and our last poll question is basically asking, if you may, the poll. Just take off for a few minutes. We are talking about select your reason for acquiring debt. It's a multiple choice question. You can tick as many. So in there we have consumption, investment, school fees. We have occasions like birthdays, shopping, car purchase, repairs, start a business, building a house. Tick off those that apply to you. It's a multiple choice. You can tick off. If it's all, you can even tick off everything. Let's take about 12, 2, 5, 3. I don't know if I'm counting backwards or forward, but in the next 1, 0, 7, 0, we can stop it. Let's see the feedback. I'm going to read you quite a number of questions, and I have been in discussion with my airtime bosses, and they have given me an extra 15 minutes, so we shall use those 15 minutes. The majority of the people listening in here take a loan for emergencies. 49% of us take a loan for emergencies, and there's another, because it's multiple choice, so people picked quite a number, so the numbers won't add up to, these are the most popular. Emergencies, 49%. Starting a business, 49%. Building a house, 48%. Shopping, 9%. Car purchase, 25%. Consumption, 20%. And it goes on and on and on and on. So that is what you have said. Tilda, allow me to just read you these questions and just take note. You find somewhere how these gentlemen can slot in their answers. Vehicle asset financing, such as for investments in buses and trucks, is it a viable debt option? Someone is asking that. Sometimes I borrow. This is another question. I borrow to pay. It happens that the time is up before I pay, so I get money from somewhere else to pay the debt. Is this borrowing consumption, or it is investment to pay off the other debt? Kindly accommodate and answer that question also. Greetings. Please assist some of us. We realize that the money people depend on, we realize that many people depend on our salaries. How can we support these dependents to independently grow their incomes? There's another one. Honestly, my expenditure is way above, my necessary expenditure is way above my income. I can't afford anything I can't even afford a side hustle. How can you help me? Their necessary expenditure, they put the necessary in bold. Their necessary expenditure is above their income. But they can't also afford a side hustle. How can you help them? This sounds like a banker. No offense, banker. I have a loan. This is another one. I'll have a loan. I need to buy I'm servicing a loan, but I also need to buy building materials. But I also want to save. How can I bring all this in the equation? Then this final one for now. Car versus savings. As Livingstone noted, we need to look at our savings versus the car we drive. But these savings, do you mean our NSSF?
That's a good one.
But they're also going ahead to add, my other savings include SPF, the Provident Funds, insurance policies, unit trusts, and and insurance policy. So you will find where to sort this. Just housekeeping platforms. Yes, this webinar will be is live on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And after this, we'll still post it there, and you can view it as and when you feel, as and when you demand. So it will be there and it will stay there. Also, there is an issue about debt counseling. There is we don't have at NSSF debt counseling services, but we can assign you to someone. With there is a feeling that some people actually need to be counseled out of debt. That they would not manage Mr. Mukasa. He will give them blows and blows. So if you need debt counseling services, just excuse me, just contact NSSF and we'll see who to point you to assist you in your financial wellness. Tilda, back to you. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Apollo. And I've liked the question about the car versus savings. And that's exactly where we're going to start. Livingstone, please put more perspective to that. Which savings were you talking about that the person has to put on the other end of the weighing scale when he's looking at his, okay?
So it's quite an interesting question because people like me, we live to observe.
Yes.
To observe. If you don't give parameters, people can relate to. You can speak and you can overspeak them, like you speak on top of their head. So the point about the car being a parameter of someone who is planning, who should be doing well, because when you start, here is the point, between your 30s and your 40s, we think that that's the age of reason. You are starting to kind of get away from the foolishness of the youth. Yeah? You are putting you are buying a piece of land. You have built a house. We assume that you have built a house. So when I talk about your savings, you should, most cars in Uganda, on average, let's say it's 20 million. If your savings, do they include NSSF? I would exclude NSSF. That is for the same fact that we tend to exclude your house from if you're looking at your assets. If you have a house and you are sleeping in it, also take it off your assets. We don't normally account it. So just look at, are my savings growing? Because actually the thing that I have noted after learning a pension fund, Mazima retirement plan, is that people are uncomfortable. They reach a parameter, they reach a number in their minds where they can no longer process money. Like they hit, a guy saves the 4 million and his problems are all directed to the 4 million. The kid is sick, that is the money he thinks of. The car has a battery problem, he thinks the same. They forget that savings are better done in pots. If you have a car problem, don't attack the school fees savings of your kids. So money is better saved in pots. However, the point that I want to emphasize is the question that has been raised about emergency savings. And I want to repeat. It is recommended that every year, at least save 1 month's income to try and say, this is my emergency fund. At the end of the day, you should have at least 6 months worth of your living costs. This is simple, and the reason why it becomes critical, that when you have emergencies, you are forced to sell assets. You are forced to go into debt, which hinders your earning power in the future. Therefore, when you have savings, they might look like the idle money, but it's your way to defend your income. It's your way to defend your assets, defend your income and defend your assets. And I think so. So look at your savings. Are they growing? The more years you have, the more you should have. Now let me end with this particular number that I have worked out, and this number is critical. In my book, in my book, The Great Financial Rebuild, I have come with a number that you should look at. This number is 150 months of your living costs. 150 months of your living costs should be the money you should retire with. If you live on 1 million, a month, you should retire with 150 million. If you have 150 million, you are ready to retire. So, but if it's not there, then, so now you look at your age and how far you are from that number. And that's the number you're chasing. So you should be working at those savings to see, do I have assets that are worth 150 months, which is 12.5 years. That's the key number. Look into your numbers and see how far are you from that number to see how far you are from having a comfortable retirement.
Okay, thank you so much, Livingstone. And as Daniel looks through the questions to answer the next one, I would like to put a bit more perspective on the aspect of money saved in pots, whereby if we refer to the strategy for financial literacy in Uganda, this is an aspect of saving with a goal, save with a purpose. So if you're looking at the example that you've highlighted, if you have saved money for a car, don't leave that money there. It's for the car. That's a pot for car. Now, if you have saved money for a house, that is house. If you have saved money for emergency, that is an emergency fund. You see, we are talking about emergency fund, but people need to save for all these other things. They have all these other pots to save for. So as we are thinking of how to get out of this debt trap, this debt chase that we are in, most of us, for the rest of our lives, we are trying to see how can we manage our current situation better. Save with a goal, save with a plan, and use your savings for exactly why you saved them. Now, there is an angle that you've given better perspective, which is the emergency fund. You know, for most of us practitioners, it's very easy for us to tell people, save and have 6 months living expenses. But now you've broken it down for a typical person out there, that you can even spend a year saving for 1 month living expenses. But if you have sacrificed for 6 years, you will have your 6 months living expenses. So in the event that a catastrophe like COVID hit, you can survive through lockdown until such a point when you can get an extra source of income. So most of these things we are talking about, people have to strike a balance. And that's where we thank NSSF for this financial literacy initiative. Because much as we are looking at debt, there are aspects of personal finance that we need to think about, aspects of savings, aspects of planning for our retirement, and things of the sort. And as an individual, you think through your life and you strike a balance. What is the formula that you're going to make work for you and for your family, and follow through to see that this formula works? Now, Daniel, answer a question, one of the questions that we have received.
Somebody asked here, is vehicle asset financing a viable business?
Okay.
I'll say yes and no. No, if you don't have something else generating money that can cushion you. A vehicle by its own nature has a lot of variables that run around it. I'm in that business, so I know exactly what I'm talking about. One of the things that happens, a person who picks a vehicle as an asset finance, you are relying on another person to give you business. The question I ask you, if that person does not give you business, you don't find a person who is going to utilize your vehicle, even for 5 days, what are you going to do? Now, if you know that if that person doesn't give me business, I will put my vehicle in this line of business and it will generate me money, then you have a safer bet as a person. Yeah. So look through. Don't go and get a vehicle and asset finance. You get a lorry and then you go and park it on a certain parking range. Do you have an appointment with the customer? That now, as soon as my vehicle has been given number plates and I'm on the parking range, somebody is going to actually utilize it for 5 days. They might come and utilize it for 1 day in a month. The bank won't hear your stories. Oh, you see, one client came and utilized it for 1 month. They'll want their monthly payment on the moment it falls due. So be very, very careful on vehicle and asset financing. It has sunk so many people in this country that have not understood it properly. Then there's a question. I'm servicing a loan. I want to build, but I also want to save. How do I fit all these demands in an equation?
Yes.
Good question, but also a challenge to each and every person that's actually viewing us this evening. One of the things you've got to do is actually to have what they call a pie. Just like you go to Nando's and they give you a pizza. That pizza is always cut in a certain way. And what you get out is normally what? What shape do you get out? a triangle. You get out a triangle from each of those pieces. Now, the same thing must be done to your income that you have. You've got to cut that income into different pies. Those pies should have a minimum as a rule. Before you do anything else, have 10% minimum. And I'm saying minimum. 10% put it on the side. Don't even negotiate that.
On the side for what?
As a saving. For investment.
Okay.
Have at least, like Livingstone has mentioned here, start creating an emergency fund. Now, an emergency fund is different from your savings. Savings are directed for investment. Emergency, as the English word mentions it, it's an emergency. Things you have not thought about happening. Sickness, death, an accident, everything which is called an emergency. So that's the person you should actually have for that. Then you can talk of your what? Your servicing of the loan, and you cut your salary along that line. Now, what it does, it will remove what I call unnecessary expenditures. You'll start asking the hard questions. Why am I spending 300,000 shillings on food? What kind of food are we eating at home? Can we actually analyze this? Then once you start analyzing that, you'll typically find the spoilages that are happening inside the home. Why am I having a bill of 80,000 for water? Why shouldn't it be 50,000? Probably people, as they are washing a cup, they are washing one cup, they open the tap and it releases 3 liters of water to wash one cup. That's how the bill accumulates. Those little foxes like Livingstone was mentioning about. Why am I having a power bill at home of 300,000? Oh, the lights, they forget to switch them off. They switch them off at 1 p.m. Why do they switch them off at 1 p.m.? It's laziness inside the home that people are actually taking for granted and stowing away your money small bits at a time. And once you aggregate that money over a period of year, you will be shocked at how much money you're actually losing. So look at those things. Create that pie. The first pie you should get off before negotiating, even before you pay your loan. Unfortunately, the bank takes off before you touch it. But the moment you get that, get off a minimum of 10%.
And you save?
The Chinese do that extensively. They do 50% for them.
Yes.
The Indians are 42%. They are close to the Chinese. Ugandans, we are 3% on average. Some people are saving on our behalf. We don't even save anything.
Yes.
So look at that thing and be able to pull that out.
So he needs to cut these obligations that he has into that allocation.
That pie.
Allocate something into your loans, be able to pay your loan. Allocate something to build something today. You don't have to build the whole structure. Phase it out and say, okay, this month I'll do this portion. I'll put the trench, or I'll put a wall, or I'll put the gate, something like that, so that you're able to cut a portion of that, and then the saving. But I like the fact that you pointed out saving comes first. Then you pay your loans before you even eat. This is something we need to remind our viewers. Even before you eat, have you paid your loans? Have you saved something? And then there you can project further. Now link this discussion to borrowing to pay back debt. Continue.
It's amazing, Tilda, how individuals absolutely lose sight of the loans that they typically have.
Yes.
If you did, unfortunately we've run our last poll, but if you did a poll on people who have debt and you ask them, do you know exactly how much you owe? To the point. I can assure you over 80% don't even know. They don't know.
Like their whole life.
They don't know.
How much debt do you have as a person?
They have no clue. They just know somebody demands money, but you ask them how much, they wouldn't be able to tell you. Now that's always a failure by an individual. And it's always a failure that's going to cost you big time in the long run. Now, why do we go and borrow to pay a debt? It's always a signal of poor money management.
Yes.
The moment you are looking for a debt to pay a debt, it's as if you are trying to solve a long-term solution problem using a short-term solution. Long-term problems are solved by long-term solutions. Don't look for a short-term solution, because the moment you get that debt, Remember one of the points that I was mentioning at the beginning of our discussion here. The moment you get that debt, it's not just interest alone as a cost. There are so many attendant costs. I've seen, sorry, bankers here who are listening to us. I've seen banks convincing people, let's buy your loan. Let's buy it.
Top up loans.
You get it? So you go and buy a loan and you get that nice feeling for 2 days. They have cleared my loan in such a bank and I have cleared it completely. You've cleared it with whose money? With another loan. Now that loan has also attendant costs. Interest being one of them. They did a processing fee. They did a mortgage fee. They did an insurance fee. There was a commission. There was legal. There was so many photocopying, getting all sorts of things. So the things that come with that are just driving you in a deeper hole when you're trying to solve a short problem. So look out for that as much as possible. Put a stop and say, you know what, these are the breaks I'm having. I'm going to face this loan right in the eye, and using the income that I have, I'm going to start knocking it off one brick at a time. That will be able to move the loan a step further. But if you are looking at just getting palliative care for a cancerous issue, then you are in trouble.
Okay, so such a person should do what you had actually talked about previously. Cut the expenses that the person has. Let them live way below their means so that they can get a bit more that can enable them to pay back the already existing loan instead of borrowing to pay back, which is something that can actually be insightful to the gentleman who asked the question about his necessary expenses. He has necessary expenses. Everything is a need in his life. But the income that he has cannot, sustain him to manage those expenses. And yet, he wants to start a side hustle. But he can't even afford the side hustle. How can we help that gentleman? Briefly, 30 seconds. And then we move on to Daniel.
It's interesting what... I would be interested to understand exactly what he means by necessary. I'll give you an example. I talked to, some years ago, a friend of mine. He was having a similar problem. He was calling these expenses are absolutely necessary. Until we sat down and did what we call a PIS. A PIS is a personal income statement. It shows you exactly how much money you are earning and where that money goes. When we started looking at the things that take the money, there was pay TV amount of 240,000.
It was a need.
It was a need. It was necessary.
Yes.
Asked him exactly why do you pay 240,000 shillings to watch TV per month? He mentioned, I need to see Bloomberg, I need to see CNN. I asked him, how much time do you spend on TV inside your home? Oh, I come back very late at around 9, so I watch TV for 30 minutes a day. He was willing to pay 240,000. But he was being challenged to just save 100,000 shillings for himself. But he was more willing to donate that money to a pay TV company than putting just 100,000 shillings for himself. So he felt offended being told 100,000. Asked him, why don't you just cut this necessary expense called TV? You will not die, by the way. You will not die. Let's do it for a month and see if you will be taken to a burial place by not paying for that TV. And a month went by, another month went by, another. Long story short, he has recovered fully from that so-called necessary expense. So look through those things that you think necessary. There is a litmus test.
More.
Is it a need? We only have few basic needs: food, housing, clothing, and what's the fourth one? There are very few.
But if you're looking at food, eating in Serena dinner versus
packing your lunch,
or cooking at home. So some of these are needs, but we still need to dissect them deeper.
Yep.
Like the example of going to a supermarket to buy vegetables. With all the markets we have in Kampala, how much can someone save from that?
Yep.
And then from there, he's able to manage his expenses better, such that he can ultimately go back to the basics of saving to start the side hustle. So it's possible. It's just that we want everything now. That's where our discussion started. We want everything now. that we are not patient enough to see ourselves grow out of the hole and into a better way of life. So thank you so much, Daniel, for that. I don't know if Livingstone can add a bit to this discussion
thank you.
and answer a question from one of the questions we received earlier.
Tilda, by the time I'm done, somebody's going to get answered here. And
Yes.
my question, let me start. If you tuned in tonight and you're earning above 900,000, count yourself lucky. I repeat, if you tuned in tonight and you're earning above Uganda shillings, 900,000, count yourself lucky. The average salary for Wakiso and Kampala for this economy is 900,000, which means many people have been able to build homes and they have been able to feed their family and they're living okay on 900,000. You earn 2.5 million and you say it's not enough. Man, do you want to curse God? So in a nutshell, as an observer of society, I think in my other profession it should have been a philosopher. Ugandans don't like to save. We say so. But I have come to observe Ugandans love to invest. Maybe we, the people that teach them, should change the language. Instead of telling them, because when we talk about saving, they hear sacrificing, they hear pain. When we talk about investing, they hear, we earn in the future. But saving and investing is the same game. It's the same number. So you should be able to see an opportunity to increase your income in the future. But when you are investing, you see an opportunity to increase income in the future. So here is what I find interesting, that people fear risk, to take risk, because the economy demands that this particular jungle we call a forest, you got to go out and hunt. If you don't hunt, you'll be hunted. And that's exactly what is happening in this debt cycle. People don't take risks to go out and earn more money. So the banks come hunting their salary. I said, if you don't hunt, you will be hunted. So ask yourself, don't sell yourself short. This is what I see in this economy. If you deserve a raise, go to the boss, put your suit on properly, speak nicely to the lady or to the boss, and tell boss I deserve more. Because many people are not getting what is due to them. When I was working for somewhere some years back, and now it's 15 years ago, I went to my boss. I was just a younger man, 26 years. My boss was a government minister. I walked into this big office. You know, if you have been in a government minister's office in Uganda, you know what I'm talking about. But I told him, boss, I deserve more. He said, no, we cannot pay you more. I put in a resignation and he resigned. Because if you are tied in a job that does not pay you enough, come on. If you're earning 300 in a company where the highest paid employee is getting 700, your ceiling is 700. So if you stay there, maybe it is time to walk out and figure out where the better opportunities are. So therefore, this question that we are supposed to be dependents, the people you always have, if you have children, you are the one who gave birth to them. It is a sin if you don't look after them. But if you have these dependents, try to see how, you see your problems are growing. This is what I find very interesting, that if you have a family like I do, these kids' problems, the shoes they are putting on, the fees they are paying, the school, the problems are growing, but your income is not growing. And you expect to be better off in the future? Come on, this is something to think about.
Okay. So as we wind up our discussion for today, it's really been heated up. I've learned so much from our panelists, and I'm hoping the people out there that are viewing us have also picked a point or two. Now, at this point, Daniel and Livingstone, give us some parting pointers from what we have covered today that someone out there needs to have at the back of their mind as they remember this webinar that was held today by Daniel, Livingstone, and Tilda. So, Daniel, kindly give us your parting pointers for a viewer out there, and possibly it's a good opportunity for you to also say bye to them, because we are winding up, you know, the program. Yes.
Thanks, Tilda. As we wind up, I just want to give a rhetorical question here.
Yes.
In 2019, the banks earned 906 billion in net profits. Net, not gross, net profits. The question I would like to ask the viewers, on which side do you fall on that net profit? As a contributor to that net profit, or as a person earning from that net profit.
Yes.
Think about that. But that's on the banks. I've not talked about the money lenders. I've not talked about the loan sharks. I've not talked about every other informal money service provider. So on which side are you falling? And the side you fall on is a result of the actions you have done probably 5 years ago. The thing you need to do right now, on which side do I need to fall 5 years from now? The actions you take from this debate today, the decisions you take today are going to be reflected 5 years from now. And once we come back probably 5 years from now and we're having a similar discussion around this topic, I would like to hear on which side you actually fall as a person. But you have a chance to take a decision. And that decision is by you and not any other person. Let's stop this blame game when we land into the debt cycle, where we're blaming our parents, we're blaming our friends, we're blaming our bad days and say that he never bailed me out, he never helped me. Who landed you in that problem, into that problem in the first place? Normally, it is you who landed yourself, and you need to take an action right now. Whatever we are talking about, if you just pick one thing and you work on it, you'll be a better person 12 months from now, and you will have a better story to talk about on your debt issue. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Daniel. We can now listen to Livingstone's parting pointers to a viewer out there.
I had also written the 5-year journey. I've seen this economy. You can change your life in 5 years if you put yourself to work. But since he has talked about that, I'm going to encourage people to read. We have a lot of local resources now that are writing on our financial situations better. And I can mention the likes of Babla Katende and Manichua and my books, the books I write, like The Great Financial Rebuild and Investing in the Future. These are local resources we write because we understand this economy. So take time to educate yourself. Get out of financial illiteracy. And don't think just because you're a boss or you have people you look over that you supervise, that doesn't mean make you financially savvy. So take time to educate yourself and handle your finances well. Just like you handle the finances of the company better be able to handle your finances well. And I also want to say, emergency savings are critical, and in fact it helped us also to build an emergency fund called My Savings, which I encourage people to be able to think through. Build your emergency fund, think ahead, reason, and ask yourself, what do I want to be? What do I want to be remembered for? So that you can be able to grow. And so I've enjoyed the discussion, Tilda, and thank you, Daniel, for being on the panel. Thank you.
All right, so thank you so much, Livingstone. And to our viewers out there, I'll give my final remarks before I hand over to Apollo. And one of the key aspects that has stood out for me in this discussion is that if you look at the FinScope 2018, the FinScope survey, only 10% of Ugandans out there are borrowing from formal financial institutions. These are the banks. But it's a reminder to all of us that these institutions are there to give you these services, but you need to equip yourself with the right information as you access these institutions. Ask yourself the right questions. Think through the decision that you're making to acquire debt. Are you getting it at the right time? Are you getting the best product from the best institution? Shop around. We have 25, 24 plus banks in Uganda. Shop around and get the best service that can meet your needs. But all in all, before you borrow, think through the issues that we've talked about today. Is it good debt or is it bad debt? Now, personally, I'm a strong advocate of saving. Livingstone put it correctly that most Ugandans think deeper into investment but are very reluctant about saving. But meaningful investment, ladies and gentlemen, comes from that effort that you put into growing your own money and saving something for a better life. So as I wind up our discussion today, you need to remember that what we talk about as poor people, I believe, okay, personally too, that a poor person, when it comes to financial matters, is not just about the money you have, but it's about the level of financial knowledge that you have. So are you really poor or are you rich when it comes to getting to know more, learning more? And the more you get to know is the better the financial decisions that you'll make. So I thank NSSF so much for this discussion. I thank you for giving us this platform to share a point or two with our viewers. And I'm hoping we can make sound financial decisions when it comes to planning for our debt, such that we can live a better life right now, starting today, but also even at the point when we come in, to get our retirement fund from NSSF, we come in with our heads held high because we have lived a better life today, a better life tomorrow, and a better life in the future. So thank you so much for viewing us today. I pass you over to Apollo.
Thank you, Tilda. You couldn't have said it any better. A better life, a better life, a better life. At NSSF, the tagline goes, a better life. And we are making savings a way of life, purposeful saving, not just saving, but purposeful saving as a way of life. Thank you so much, everyone that has tuned in. Thank you so much for all our usual listeners, viewers, the participants. Thank you so much. This has been our monthly parade. I told you we are in the school of money, and every time we take off some time to just talk about money at the General Assembly. I need to remind you that as the headmaster of this school, I look forward to results. We shall have that. The results are evident. We will definitely have those results. The reports. You take those reports home, and your children will be asking you, Daddy, for all the 30 years you've worked, what are you leaving behind? So the reports will be the access of those reports is going to be in your own house. Just to remind you, on the 23rd we are coming back. Our next parade will be on the 23rd of March. Same time. It will be a Tuesday this time. We couldn't do Tuesday tomorrow because it's a public holiday. And this is personal finance, and we ask you that you always take off some personal time to reflect about this. From myself, NSSF, I would want to thank the panelists. Tilda from Bank of Uganda, thank you so much. Livingstone from so many businesses, thank you so much. Daniel, thank you so much. I've gotten questions. Can we have these panelists? Can we have these people for our organizations? Through NSSF, you can reach us at financialliteracy@nssfug.org. Just send your requests, and we see how we can channel them to these particular persons. Also, we shall post their public addresses on at the end of this webinar, so that you can get in touch with them. We encourage you to get in touch with them personally, or you can go through NSSF. We won't charge you brokerage fees. Our desire is to have you make that sound decision. We are talking about financial intelligence. We are not talking about financial education or academic education. We are talking about intelligence, and that we think will take us to the next level. From myself, thank you so much for tuning in. My crew, I have a very huge crew behind me to bring this to you guys. The NSSF team, the financial literacy team, the Live Extreme crew. Thank you so much. From now, we say goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you, Tilda.
Thank